My very first job was at a gas station when I was just 15 years old. The station was located in an old building off the beaten path in the Midwest. One of the responsibilities of the job was taking out the trash to the dumpster at the end of the night. The dumpster itself was about 50 yards away from the back door of the gas station. It was only illuminated by a single light hanging over it and was located near the semi-trucks that would stay overnight. Needless to say, it was incredibly dark out there. On one particular night, as I was tossing the trash into the dumpster, I heard a soft voice saying, "Hey boy." I turned around, but I couldn't see anything except a few semi-trucks with their lights turned off. I brushed it off, thinking it was just my imagination, and began heading back to the store. However, the voice called out again, this time louder, saying, "Psst, hey boy." Assuming that someone needed assistance, I responded, "Hello, can I help you?" Then the voice whispered, "Come here." Because it was so dark, I couldn't see anyone, and my instincts were telling me to get out of there. Without saying a word, I started walking back fast towards the building. By this point, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up, and I decided to pick up the pace and jog back to the gas station. Suddenly, I heard a man with a deep voice shouting at the top of his lungs, "Hey, boy!" I sprinted back to the gas station, locked the doors since it was closing time, and got the heck out of there. The following morning, when I arrived for my shift, I was met with a scene of police tape, several police cars, and a couple of officers chatting with my manager. It turned out that someone had broken in and robbed the place just 30 minutes after I had left. When I shared my experience with the police, they mentioned how it seemed to match the description of a couple of other gas station robberies in the area, where the perpetrators would take hostages and rob the store at gunpoint. One individual had even been severely beaten. To this day, I still have nightmares about this. I can't imagine what would have happened if I hadn't listened to my gut. 34 years ago, I worked the night shift at a combined gas station and convenience store. It was one of the most dangerous jobs back then, since we often dealt with cash transactions and were frequently staffed with only one employee during nighttime hours. The clock was inching closer to midnight, and I found myself alone in the store. During those times, every store had a payphone mounted on the outside wall. There was a slow trickle of customers coming in and out, but it was an unusually quiet night. I noticed a young man walking across the parking lot and picking up the telephone receiver. At first, it didn't raise any major concerns for me. However, within the next 2 or 3 minutes, the situation took a dramatic turn. I observed the guy continuously peeking into the store while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. My heart sank as soon as I realized what he was planning. He was waiting for the store to empty out so he could rob me, or worse. I quickly reached for my own phone and called the police. I explained the situation to them, and they assured me that they were on their way. They urged me to lock the door to prevent him from entering, but given how close he was to the door already, I doubted I would be able to close it in time. Panic started to set in. There were 2 customers remaining in the store. One of them was a young woman. The man on the phone was watching our every move, so I engaged the young woman in small talk, doing my best to keep her inside the store. Thankfully, I succeeded in keeping her inside a bit longer. The man on the phone continued to observe us intently. At that very moment, just as the young woman was preparing to leave, 2 police cruisers screeched into the parking lot with their attention focused on the man with the phone. Realizing the situation was escalating, he attempted to run, but he didn't make it far. Within 100 yards, the police apprehended him. They discovered he was armed with a pistol, a large knife, and had a long criminal history of violent robberies. That night served as a wake-up call, and I quit my job. I worked as a transporter in a hospital. About 2 years ago, we moved from the old city hospital into a new state-of-the-art facility. The old hospital was built in the 1930s and was showing its age, plus at night was just plain creepy. Each floor had an east and west wing. The east wing of the fourth floor was the first wing to be shut down, about 2 weeks before the relocation. One night at around 9:30 p.m., I was up on the fourth floor moving to get a patient from the west wing when I saw a small group of nurses and aides who all used to work on the now closed east wing. They looked visibly shaken, so I walked over to see if everything was okay. When I asked, they told me that they had decided to walk through their old wing for nostalgia's sake, and when they were over there, the phone at the nurses' station started ringing. The computers and phones had not yet been moved. Not sure what to do, one of the nurses reached over the counter and answered the phone. She told me that there was a woman's voice on the other end that sounded confused. The nurse said she had identified herself and asked the caller how she could help her, but the caller asked again, "Hello, who is this?" The nurse repeated her name and asked, "Is there anything I can help you with?" To which the caller responded, "Where am I?" The nurse told her the name of the hospital and asked if she was a patient there. The woman simply said, "Oh, okay," and the line went dead. That was when the nurse finally looked at the screen on the phone to see where the call was coming from. The call came from the room directly next to the nurse's station. The rooms by this point had all been cleared out and the phones removed. They could see directly into the room and nobody was in there. That's when they sprinted toward the west wing, where I was getting off the elevator. I avoided that wing for the rest of my time there. I used to work at City Hall a few years ago as a security guard. There were abandoned jail cells in the basement that had not been used in years, and part of my duties was to patrol them for any squatters. It was probably my second time patrolling alone, and things started to get really weird. I went down to the old prison cells, which was a long, narrow hallway, about 6 meters wide and 100 meters long, with cells on both sides. The hallway was lit with light bulbs hanging from the ceiling. I was walking past the fourth column of cells when the lights went out, so I turned on my flashlight and walked back toward the light switch. Right when I was about to turn them back on, the lights flickered on again. I thought that was weird and decided to quickly get out of there. I started walking fast past the cells while briefly checking them, and I was about halfway when the lights went off again. Then I heard 2 cell doors slam. That was it for me. I ran with my flashlight on, straight toward the other end of the hallway, and then up to my workstation. I then called my supervisor and asked him if there were any electrical issues reported, but he said no. I was worried because I still had 2 hours left on my shift, and I had no other option than to sit alone at my workstation, paranoid and panicking for the rest of my shift. I used to work at Taco Bell a while back. One night, as my coworkers and I were preparing to close, we turned off the outside lights. As soon as we turned them off, the restaurant phone rang. My manager answered, and we heard a man's voice on the other end. I distinctly remember him saying, "I know there are only girls in there. I've been watching for a while. Don't come out. I'll be waiting for you." We were all terrified, but we desperately hoped it was just a prank call since kids would sometimes do that. Uneasy, I glanced out into the lobby, and standing at the door with his back turned towards us was a tall man wearing a tucked-in blue-collared shirt. We immediately called the police and watched as they approached the man and spoke to him. They asked him to leave, and we never saw that guy again.